Welcome back, everyone, to part 3 of our 20-part Dental Coding and CDT Mastery course. I am so thrilled to have you here today. If you've been following along with this explainer series, you know we're building a rock-solid foundation for your revenue cycle management career. Today, we're taking a massive leap forward. We're going to master tooth surfaces, lock down the single-letter surface codes you'll see literally every day in dental charts, and, most importantly, decode the critical combination rules for restorative billing. This is right where clinical knowledge meets coding accuracy, and I promise you, getting this down is going to make your life a whole lot easier.
So here's a question to kick things off. How do anatomical surface counts directly dictate your restorative CDT codes? It's absolutely vital. As medical coders, dental billers, or CDT aspirants, you might be thinking, why do I actually need to care about the literal physical shape of a tooth? Well, the answer is simple. In dental billing, especially in that restorative category, anatomy directly dictates revenue. If you miscount surfaces, or if you don't fully grasp how those surfaces combine, your claim is heading straight for a denial. We are going to bridge that gap today so you never ever make those mistakes.
Real quick, before we dive into the new stuff, let's do a fast 15-second recap of Part 2, just to prime our scaffolding. Remember, we divided the mouth into two main zones. We've got the anterior teeth, right? Those are your front teeth, your centrals, laterals, and cuspids. And then we have the posterior teeth, which are your back teeth, the premolars, bicuspids, and molars. Keeping this front versus back layout in your head is going to be incredibly important for the surface codes we're about to tackle. All right, here's our quick roadmap for today. 1. Anatomy of tooth surfaces. 2. Standard surface abbreviations. 3. Critical combination coding rules. 4. Real-world CDT application. And 5. Our summary and next steps.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Anatomy of Tooth Surfaces.
Understanding these surfaces is really the absolute bedrock of dental coding, especially when you're dealing with things like restorations and extractions. So let's start with our very first surface, facial, which we abbreviate as F. The facial surface is exactly what it sounds like. It's the surface of the tooth facing outward. But here's the trick. It actually has two specific clinical designations depending on where the tooth is located. If we're talking about the anterior or front teeth, the facial surface faces the lips, so we call that labial. But if we're talking about the posterior or back teeth, it faces the cheeks, and we call that buccal. So really, labial and buccal are just specific types of facial surfaces.
Next up, we've got the lingual surface, abbreviated as L. This is the inner surface of the tooth. So, for the lower jaw, it's the surface facing the tongue, and for the upper jaw, it faces the palate. I have a great trick for you here. Think of linguistics or language. Language is formed with the tongue, right? So the lingual surface is the one right next to the tongue. Pretty easy to memorize when you think of it like that.
Moving right along, we have the mesial surface, abbreviated as M. Imagine drawing a vertical line straight down the exact center of your face, right between your two front teeth. That's your midline. The mesial surface is simply the side of any tooth that is closest to that center midline. Precision is key here. It's always pointing toward the center of the dental arch. And directly contrasting with mesial, we have the distal surface, abbreviated as D. If mesial is closest to the midline, distal is the side of the tooth facing away from that center midline. A super simple way to remember this? Distal sounds like distance. It's the surface at a distance, moving away from the center of the mouth.
Okay, our fifth surface is the incisal surface, or I. This is the sharp, cutting, or biting edge of a tooth. Now listen up, because this is incredibly important for your coding exams and your daily work. The term incisal is exclusively used for anterior teeth. You only bite and cut with your front teeth, right? Your incisors and canines? So you are never, ever going to see an incisal code on a back molar.
Finally, we have the occlusal surface, abbreviated as O. This is the broad, flat chewing or grinding surface. And just like incisal belongs only to the front teeth, occlusal belongs exclusively to the posterior teeth, your premolars and molars. They do the heavy lifting of chewing, and that is exactly what the occlusal surface is designed for.
Moving on to Section 2, Standard Surface Abbreviations.
Now that we have the clinical definitions down, we need to transition into the actual single-letter codes that you'll see written in the provider's charts. What's really cool here is how visually clear the distinction becomes between the front and back of the mouth. If you look at the breakdown, anterior teeth use M for mesial, F for facial or labial, I for incisal, L for lingual, D for distal, and G for gingival, which refers to the gum line. But when you look at the posterior row, you still have M, L, D, and G, but that I for incisal is swapped out for O for occlusal,
And F for facial is specified as B for buccal because it's facing the cheek. Just instantly contrasting these two sets in your mind is going to save you so much time when you're auditing a chart.
All right, into Section 3, Critical Combination Coding Rules.
This is the climax of today's explainer, guys. Knowing the letters is the basics. Knowing how to combine them legally and accurately, that's what makes you a master coder. These rules can literally make or break a claim. The first major one we have to master is the gingival or G rule. The gingival surface relates to the gum line. So here is the golden rule. When G is documented alongside a second surface in a restorative procedure, the entire combination is considered just one single surface for billing purposes. Let me repeat that. If a provider charts buccal gingival, or BG, you do not bill for two surfaces. It is counted as one. Same goes for DG, FG, LG, or MG. The gingival modifier basically acts as an extension of that primary surface, not a brand new one to bill.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point, the rule of redundancy. We have a quote directly from our coding guidelines that says FB is considered one surface, since the two letters describe the same surface. Remember what we learned just a few moments ago? Facial is the overarching term for the outside surface, and buccal is just the specific term for the cheek-facing posterior surface. They are the exact same physical side of the tooth. So, if a provider accidentally jots down FB, you logically know you can't bill that as a two-surface restoration. I mean, unless you somehow found a tooth with two cheeks, right? It's one surface. Understanding the anatomy literally prevents you from making this redundant billing error.
Let's put this into practice with Section 4, Real-World CDT Application.
We really need to connect all these anatomical rules directly back to the financial reality of the D2000 to D2999 restorative code block. When you're looking at a chart, here is the progressive logic you absolutely must follow. Step 1, identify if there are multiple restorations happening on a single tooth. Step 2, if there are, you have to tally the surfaces up and select the appropriate multi-surface code. For example, the CDT codes range from one surface to two surfaces to three surfaces, all the way up to four or more surfaces, like an MOD, a mesial occlusal distal filling. The surface count dictates the final code choice and therefore the reimbursement rate. And Step 3, never bill these surfaces separately.
Which brings us to a massive compliance alert. Unbundling warning. It is strictly prohibited to bill each surface separately for multiple restorations on the same exact tooth on the same day. So, for example, if a dentist does a mesial filling and an occlusal filling on tooth number 3, you cannot bill two separate one-surface codes. You have to bundle them into a single two-surface MO code. Billing them separately is called unbundling. It's a major violation, and it is a guaranteed way to trigger claim denials and audits. You've got to bundle those surfaces. Finally, Section 5, Summary and Next Steps. Let's wrap this up.
Excellent work today, everyone. Let's summarize the structural framework we just built together. You've absorbed a lot of crucial information that directly impacts the revenue cycle. The main takeaway is this: your clinical knowledge absolutely secures the revenue cycle. Today, we defined the 6 core surfaces: facial, lingual, mesial, distal, incisal, and occluval. We mapped out exactly how anterior surface codes differ from posterior surface codes. We completely mastered the gingival combination rule and the FB redundancy rule, making sure we never overcount surfaces. And finally, we learned exactly how to bundle multi-surface restorations to completely avoid those messy unbundling violations.
You guys are doing fantastic, and honestly, we're just getting started. Coming up next in Part 4 of our masterclass, we're going to zoom out from the individual tooth and look at the entire mouth. We'll be diving into dental quadrants and arch mapping, specifically breaking down the maxillary upper jaw versus the mandibular lower jaw. You absolutely will not want to miss how that plays into your coding accuracy.
Before you go, I want you to ask yourself a quick question. How many claims in your practice right now are being denied simply because someone didn't realize a buccal and facial surface were the exact same thing? Just think about that revenue leak for a second. If you found this explainer helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss Part 4, and drop any questions you have down in the comments below. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Check out the full playlist to review Parts 1 and 2 if you haven't already. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and decode healthcare with Harshal.